Good morning, Roger here in a beautifully sunny, very spring-like Hallandsåsen in the south of Sweden. And well, I'm getting any closer. I really don't know if I am getting any closer. But as we sort of wind our way through the maze, the labyrinth, the confusion, etc. This morning I did this blog, which I wanted to really read and just riff on or rap on as I go through it. So I've just published it. The link's in the description, and the title of the blog is Boule Boules and IABATO. Silenced tongues cost lives. Time to speak out. And why they chose that title will become clear as we progress through the blog. Now, the first thing is, in this blog, this is an old painting which is of Momus, who's the god of satire, god of taking the piss. And I mean, anyone that's been following my own frustrations and criticisms of the current leadership, as it were, or would-be leadership, is that there aren't enough people just taking the rise and ripping it mercilessly out of them and handing them back their arsehole on a plate, frankly. Klaus Schwab, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, Philippe Hildebrand, Larry Fink, Peter Thiel, Eric Schmidt, Sergey Brin. I mean, the list goes on. We're all familiar with the ship of fools known as the billionaire class, and yet dear old Momus has spared them their blushes. The little voice in the parade pointing out that the emperor has no clothes. And so what is it all for is where this blog ends up. What is the point? Surely the point can't be to fall on our knees and then prostrate ourselves before the would-be pantheon of billionaire gods. Surely not. So that's then got a link to the Wikipedia article on Momus, and then there are some further quotes to come related to that mythological character. So this is a guiding touchstone for interpreting anything you think that has been authentically and sincerely communicated to you by any modern mass media, whether it be through education institutions, popular press, television, documentary, or fiction, bear these four terms in mind, and they're from someone called Bruce Charlton. So, thus, the major output of the modern international mass media consists of only four categories. 1, good presented as bad. 2, bad presented as good. So that is to say, simple inversion, a simple inversion of the point which is being communicated. So good as bad or bad as good. 3, good presented as good for a bad reason. 4, bad presented as bad for a bad reason. That is to say, explanatory inversion. So something which is good is being presented as good, but for a bad reason, or bad presented as bad for a bad reason. Explanatory inversion. So these 4 categories, which can be summarized as either simple or explanatory inversion, account for all sustained and high impact modern major mass media stories without any exceptions. And in the current era, that is amplified. This is in a book published online by Bruce Charlton called Addicted to Distraction. And I think it will, I think it's been out for about 8 years. So post the global financial crisis of 2008, or the so-called financial crisis, the need to exaggerate, conceal, to maintain a falsehood has clearly increased, and the current full-on levels of censorship and plain lying that we're subjected to on a daily basis, they certainly don't contradict that as a touchstone of, okay, what is this person saying? What are they actually wanting me to get from this? And then just flip it around according to those four guides. So yesterday's blog I did was called Snookered a Dead End, a mirror written to camera obscura. Which species of inversion is this? So obviously these are the inversions which I've just said a little about. And so as a general sort of starting point and where I'm at with this is a poem which I wrote a few years back now, or part of a poem called Globalization Unentangled. And here's a couple of lines from that, or several lines. Elisa with Rogerian inscrutability, here's the confession of the malcontents. A mirror held up before cosmetic application. Globalization and internationalism confused. Despotism's nature is to abhor any, save that of its own momentary pleasure. It annihilates all intermediate situations between boundless strength on its own part and total debility on the part of the people. Our education can be our government. Our reason can be our judge of the rivals, globalism, authority, coercion and competition, or nationalism, internationalism, cooperation. Are we to have free will and democracy? Will we have determined authority? A struggle of ideals, an ancient quarrel, Parmenides or Heraclitus, navigators both. I then have a link to a blog which I did at the, during the Brexit debate, and all of the fun and games. Cameron resigns, May gets in, Boris Johnson is appointed foreign minister. There's then the meeting at Chequers where it becomes apparent that all is not. See, all the while realizing that that's just the surface story that we were told about what exactly was going on with all of that lot. Captain Euro is a cartoon character, an award-winning cartoon character made by an Italian propagandist for the EU. And I had some fun in that blog looking at, the absurdity of that, the unknowingness, the unself-knowingness of it. And I think Momus himself would have had quite a laugh and quite something to say about that. I wonder, Momus, where the shadows of the dead sit somewhere and look with deep laughter on men who play in terrible earnest the old, known, solemn repetitions of history. A droning monotone, soft as sea laughter, hovers from your kindliness of bronze. And that's a few lines from a stanza of a poem that you'll find linked to in that blog. And then I linked to this other blog that I did a week or a few days ago, which title is Anti-Semitism, Zionism and Imperialism, all alike find reason on their side. Did Pope wear a funny hat? And don't mention the war. Now, the general idea of that blog was looking at conspiracy theories of a conspiracy that were expounded in the 1970s and 80s by a guy called Douglas Rees, and another guy by the name of Sutton. And a lot of what was ridiculed in the past and has had the fun poked at it. Was it first they laugh at you, then you fight you, then you win? I think that was Gandhi, wasn't it? Clearly the techniques of satire, Momus's bent, as it were, are applied the other way to critics of the dominant story, the received wisdom, the necessary beliefs of remaining kind of at liberty or at large. So Alexander Pope, that quote's from Pope's essay on man. So that's that point. I'll then sort of take a bit of a detour here because this stands here. On the 7th day of the month, in the prytany of Zeus and the presidency of Poseidon, Apollo in the chair, the following bill, introduced by Sleep, was read by Momus, son of Night, before a true and lawful meeting of the assembly, whom fortune direct. Now, the prytany is an office within something called a boule, which goes back to the system of democracy described by Cleanthes, I think it was, in ancient Athens. And this idea of the boule being an assembly, I mean, the idea of one word having different meanings and being able to use a word in multiple contexts is a way of deceiving. And so this then is a link to boule and its disambiguation. And so a boule can be a citizens' council appointed to run daily affairs. A boule can be a loaf of bread, a type of loaf of bread. There's a community in the Ivory Coast, a synthetically produced crystal, a gambling game, the BOLL, Boule gene, responsible for sperm production, no less. A range of mountains in the Rocky Mountains, and collective term for ball games. And then here we are. I suggest that our balls are similarly cupped, as in this image here, and we need to actually get them out of this vice-like grip and find our voice and speak up. So boule, petang, bocker are all boule sports. I mean, you know, there's different ways of skinning the cat. We're going to finish here with some French cartoons. There's a link to a French cartoon, and well, it's actually Belgium, so French Belgian cartoon, and the interviewer says to the guy that draws this cartoon, well, I actually like cats because you don't get police cats, which was obviously a joke that was in the late 1960s, which is, that is quite a funny joke, really, isn't it? So anyway, that's what that's about. And then expanding out from that, then let's have a look at this this petition put forward, introduced by Sleep and read by Momus before the gods. Whereas numerous persons, both Greeks and barbarians, being in no way entitled to the franchise, have by means unknown procured their names to be enrolled on our register, filling the heavens with false gods, troubling our banquets with a tumultuous rout of miscellaneous polyglot humanity, and causing a deficiency in the supplies of ambrosia and nectar, whereby the price of the latter commodity, owing to increased consumption, has risen to £4 the half pint, and whereas the said persons have presumptuously forced themselves into the places of genuine and old established deities, and in contravention of law and custom have further claimed precedence of the same deities upon the earth. It goes on. It has seemed good to the Senate and people that an assembly be convened upon Olympus at or about the time of the winter solstice, for the purpose of electing a commission of inquiry, the commissioners to be duly qualified gods, 7 in number, of whom 3 to be appointed from the most ancient senate of Cronus, and the remaining 4 from the 12 gods, of whom Zeus to be 1, and the said commissioners shall, before taking their seats, swear by sticks according to the established form, and Hermes shall summon by proclamation all such as claim admission to the assembly to appear and bring with them sworn witnesses, together with documentary proofs of their origin, and all such persons shall successively appear before the commissioners, and the commissioners, after examination of their claims, shall either declare them to be gods or dismiss them to their own tombs and family vaults. And if the commissioners subsequently discover in heaven any person so disqualified from entering, such persons shall be thrown into Tartarus. And further, each god shall follow his own profession and no other, and it shall not be lawful either for Athene to heal the sick, or for Asclepius to deliver oracles, or for Apollo to practice 3 professions at once, but only one, either prophecy or music or medicine, according as he shall select. And instructions shall be issued to philosophers, forbidding them either to invent meaningless names or to talk nonsense about matters of which they know nothing. And if a temple and sacrificial honours have already been accorded to any disqualified person, his statue shall be thrown down, and that of Zeus or Hera or Athene or other gods substituted in its place, and his city shall provide him with a tomb and set up a pillar in lieu of his altar. And against any person refusing to appear before the commissioners in accordance with the proclamation, judgment shall be given by default. That, gentlemen, is the bill. Zeus replies, and a very equitable one it is, Momus. All in favour of this bill hold up their hands, or no, our opponents are sure to be in a majority. You may all go away now, and when Hermes makes the proclamation, every one must come, bringing with him complete particulars and proofs, with his father's and mother's names, his tribe and clan, and the reason and circumstances of his deification. And any of you who fail to produce your proofs will find it is no use having great temples on the earth or passing there for gods. That will not help you with the commissioners. So now I'm going to read The Secular Mask by John Dryden. I'm going to do that in full. Enter Janus. Janus. Kronos, Kronos, mend thy pace. 100 times the rolling sun around the radiant belt has run in his revolving race. Behold, behold the goal in sight. Spread thy fans and wing thy flight. Enter Kronos with a scythe in his hand and a great globe on his back, which he sets down at his entrance. Kronos speaks. Weary, weary of my weight, let me drop my freight and leave the world behind. I could not bear another year the load of humankind. Enter Momus laughing. Ha ha! Ha ha! Well hast thou done to lay down thy pack and lighten thy back. The world was a fool ere since it begun, and since neither Janus nor Kronos nor I can hinder the crimes or mend the bad times, 'tis better to laugh than to cry. All three in chorus. 'Tis better to laugh than to cry. Janus speaks. Since Momus comes to laugh below, old Time begin the show, that he may see in every scene what changes in this age have been. Kronos replies. Then, goddess of the silver bow, begin horns or hunting music within. Diana with horns, with hounds, I awaken the day, and high to my woodland walks away. I tuck my robe and am buskined soon, and tie to my forehead a waxing moon. I course the fleet stag and kennel the fox, and chase the wild goats o'er summits of rocks. With shouting and hooting we pierce through the sky, an echo turns hunter, and doubles the cry. With shouting and hooting we pierce through the sky, and echo turns hunter and doubles the cry. Then our age was in its prime, free from rage and free from crime. A very merry dancing, drinking, laughing, quaffing and unthinking time. Then our age was in its prime, free from rage and free from crime. A very merry dancing, drinking, laughing, quaffing and unthinking time. Dance of Diana's attendants. Mars. Inspire the vocal brass, inspire the world is past its infant stage. Arms and honour, set the martial mind on fire and kindle manly rage. Mars has looked the sky to red, and peace the lazy good is fled. Plenty, peace and pleasure fly, the sprightly green in woodland walks no more is seen. The sprightly green has drunk the Tyrian dye. Plenty, peace. Mars. Sound the trumpet, beat the drum. Through all the world around, sound a reveille, sound, the warrior god is come. Thy sword within the scabbard keep, and let mankind agree, better the world were fast asleep than kept awake by thee. The fools of are only thinner with all our cost and care, but neither side a winner, for things are as they were. Calms appear, then storms are past. Love will have his honour at last. Nature is my kindly care. Mars destroys and I repair. Take me while you may. Venus comes not every day. The world was then so light, I scarcely felt the weight. Joy ruled the day and love the night. But since the queen of pleasure left the ground, I faint, I lag, and feebly drag the ponderous orb around, all a piece throughout. Thy chase had a beast in view to Mars, thy wars brought nothing about, thy lovers were all untrue. 'Tis well, and old age is out, and time to begin anew. All of a piece throughout, thy chase had a beast in view. Thy wars brought nothing about, thy lovers were all untrue. 'Tis well, and old age is out, and time to begin anew. I must find a performance of that with all of the choruses and whatnot sort of properly rendered with the different characters reading the different pieces. But I do think it's Dryden's poem is a comment upon our own present hiatus, our present confusion, our present discombobulation, if you will. So then I linked to a blog or two blogs. One is Carthage Must Be Destroyed. And the other one, the narcissism of small differences and in-group biases, etc. And here are some interesting points that arose from that. So, the fascists down the last small-time demagogue. The fascists, down to the last small-time demagogue, continuously emphasize ritualistic ceremonies and hierarchical differentiations. The less hierarchy within the setup of a highly rationalized and quantified industrial society is warranted, the more artificial hierarchies with no objective, raison d'etre, are built up and rigidly imposed by fascists for purely psychotechnical reasons. Hitler's famous formula, Verantwortung nach oben and Autorität nach unten, responsibility to above, authority towards below, nicely rationalizes this character's ambivalence. This is the line pursued by the agitators' standard unity trick. They emphasize their being different from the outsider, but play down such differences within their own group and tend to level out distinctive qualities among themselves, with the exception of the hierarchical one. We are all in the same boat. Nobody should be better off. The snob, the intellectual, the pleasure seeker are always attacked. The undercurrent of malicious egalitarianism, of the brotherhood, of all comprising humiliation, is a component of fascist propaganda and fascism itself. It's found its symbol in Hitler's notorious command of the Eintopfgericht, okay, which is a one-pot meal, the one-pot meal. So we're going to talk a little bit about that in a minute, but this goes on. This is from Adorno and his essay on the Freudian theory and pattern of fascist propaganda. So orality, language itself, devoid of its rational significance, functions in a magical way and furthers those archaic regressions which reduce individuals to members of crowds. Since this very quality of uninhabited but largely associative speech presupposes at least a temporary lack of ego control, it may well indicate weakness rather than strength. The fascist agitators boasting of strength is indeed frequently accompanied by hints at such weakness, particularly when begging for momentary contributions, hints which, to be sure, are skillfully merged with the idea of strength itself. So there's a whole extract of that essay in that link blog above. And then here's this article here by someone called Natasha Frost called The Forgotten Nazi History of One-Pot Meals. Officials believed the stews and soups had the power to unite Germany. So this was the Eintopfsonntag campaign, a Nazi push to make German families eat one-pot meals. Eventually, it would endure well into the Second War and popularize these stews, soups, and pilafs in Germany for generations to come. Hier ist Berlin sein Eintopfsgericht. And here we are. Here's a big kind of rally, a Sunday band playing and entreating everyone to have these one-pot meals and then spend what they save into the cause being promoted by the Nazi Party. So to take part in Eintopfsonntag, Germans had to experience deprivation for the good of the collective. A common unifying Nazi theme in a 1935 speech, Hitler castigated those who did not take part or give as much as they could to the Winterschildswerk. You are never known hunger yourself, or you would know what a burden hunger is, he said. Whoever does not participate is a characterless parasite of the German people. Those who greedily refused a day's abstinence were said to be stealing from the collective, as one regional report put it. Just as faithful Christians unite in the holy sacrament of the Last Supper in service of their Lord and Master, so too does the National Socialist Germany celebrate this sacrificial meal as a solemn vow to the unshakable people's community. In the underground press, countercultural cartoons criticised the Eintopf obligation. Which Eintopf dish is the most widespread in Germany, one asked one. The answer, Gedampfzungen, and here Zungen means tongues and Gedampf means both steamed and silenced. So silenced tongues, i.e. people not speaking out, is the most widespread one pot dish. The most common thing is someone kind of biting their own tongue or silencing their own tongue. So some of these points might appear a little bit kind of abstract, and this moving on to the next phase of this is this idea of a recipe. Is the best explanation of life, or the best metaphor for life, a jigsaw puzzle or something else, which we'll be coming to. And then I throw into here this blog, which I did on the control of oil. This is a guy called John Malcolm Blair, who wrote a book called The Control of Oil, which was published in 1976. And it's very current today, revolving around matters of oil and the access to oil, and the access to oil through currency. Now, the control of oil doesn't get into the currency aspects of it quite as much as it might, but what it certainly shows is how the cartel was shaped from the very beginnings of the oil industry, which was effectively a collective effort of the robber barons, amongst them J.D. Rockefeller, Carnegie, J.P. Morgan, etc. So that's one large piece of the pattern, if you will. One large piece of the cartoon, in the sense of the outline of a larger artistic composition, a mural, if you will. So, and then this one here then is putting the trilateral into binary divide and rule. So, I'm imploring here a trinary rather than the binary discussion, or so, and then again saying triangulate the pyramid. If you can see one point and another point quite clearly, you need to consider where your reference point is, and then you begin by joining those triangulations up. In many senses, the whole of geometry is based on triangulation and trigonometry, and knowing or imputing a set of axioms regarding right-angled triangles. You get into a very, very complex geometries, and you have the same thing in mathematics with differentiation and integration, and again, you have the idea of going from the big to the small, and if you have a phenomena where something very, very big has to happen for something very, very small to take place, that's very different to something small and measurable that can lead to big things happening. And the predictive what's the word? Certainty, or the predictive certainty of the one is somewhat less reliable. The predictive reliability is usually better if you've got a measurable smaller thing that will have a big effect. You'll have more success than having to measure something or to see something quite big happen before something small happens. And that dichotomy, if you will. Here's me saying about triangulation and then going back to a dichotomy, but looking, that's actually quite essential to understanding the misapplication of certain mathematical or scientific measurement techniques to forward the sorts of trickery which Momus is complaining of in that petition that we read regarding what is accepted as who should be accepted to the pantheon in that case, or the assembly in terms of false prophets, as it were. So anyway, I then link to the Internet Archive copy, which is available, of Stephen Zarlenga's The Lost Science of Money. And there it is here, look. Is that the right one? I'm not sure it is. Oh, this is Arthur Kitson's. Well, how strange that the Money Question by Arthur Kitson. Well, that is well worth watching or reading rather. But The Lost Science of Money, this owes more to another writer at the end of the 19th century. But anyway, I'm not going to get distracted. I just got distracted by the fact that link didn't work. But Kitson's a good read. But this book is a wonderful read. And even just the dust cover, which I'm going to read now, is something which is relevant to the general thread of where we're going to end up here. So this is the promotional text from the book jacket, dust jacket of Zarlenga's Lost Science of Money, which owes a lot to Francis Delamare, who was a writer who wrote a lot on monetary matters at the end of the 1980s, in the late 1800s. So that's the late 19th century. So what's gone wrong? Unheard of wealth concentrates into very few, largely undeserving hands. Americans and just about everybody else work harder and produce more than ever, but increasingly fall into debt and bankruptcy, while corruption rules and predators plunder society by merely shuffling papers. Less than 1% of the population now owns about 50% of the wealth and receives 70% of the income. The Lost Science of Money shows how a false concept of money allowed it to happen and tells how to reverse it. Secret power unmasked. Here are the keys that unlock the mystery of the money power, the hidden force secretly exercised by those holding society's monetary reins. The Lost Science of Money exposes the mythology created to protect those who are embezzling from society under cover of a deceptive ideology of money. This group has immorally used economic theory as a tool of class war for the past 300 years, while screaming accusations of class warfare against those who question their power. The author provides the weapons needed to protect self, family, nation, and humanity from the predations of this gang that has shrouded itself under cover of econo-speak for so long. These ideas are presented accurately, but in down-to-earth language, without the confusing economic jargon that has usually served to obfuscate the subject. Historical cases with the 119 illustrations help to convey the author's unique message. A generation misled. The gates protecting America have been left undefended. September the 11th demonstrated only one aspect of this problem. Our people have been under monetary attack from within and from abroad for most of our history, and the physical, financial, and psychological damage has far exceeded the terrible losses at New York's Twin Towers. An entire generation has been led astray into market worship. and other forms of religious fundamentalism. A dysfunctional media focuses on the elections and sex habits of politicians, while the real outcomes in society are determined behind the scenes by the structure of the nation's money system. This problem goes much deeper than accounting and stock fraud, and even beyond the graduate schools of business that inculcate such criminal behaviour. The deeper causes lay hidden in the structurally corrupt core of our banking system and our schools of economics. It arises from the falsehoods they have spread on the nature of money, allowing their patrons to control the money power and in turn to dominate our society. Those who really want to get to the bottom of the problem will find this book's message timely and valuable. So then this is a section of the lost science of money. It's right at the beginning of the book. Here it is, the usury error. So what's gone here? So this structural flaw. So this structural flaw. There we are. Right. So this quote up here, it starts from and paid in. Right. So let's just read it from down here. So the usury error. It would have been a major conceptual error to allow usury to be charged on agricultural loans denominated in metals, especially if the interest and principal was to be paid in metals. For one thing, metals are barren. They have no powers of generation. Any interest paid in them must originate from some other source or process outside of the borrower's understanding or control. Money and power would concentrate in the hands of the lenders. This structural flaw was alleviated by the central authority. Although the royal household was the largest lender and charger of interest, it took decisive action to minimise the harmful effects of usury by periodically declaring agricultural debt forgiveness. It also set official prices for valuing various farm commodities, in effect monetising them. In the earlier city cultures, even every form of exchangeable goods could be used as money. Heichelheim reports estimating that 12 to 20 such commodities were monetized. He thought that price lists such as Hammurabi's price tables and those of Sumer and of Mesopotamia have been misinterpreted as price controls when they are really official exchange rates of various commodities when used as money. This meant that borrowers, depending on their harvest to repay loans, wouldn't be harmed by seasonal market supply and demand forces, as the increased supply from their harvest tended to push market prices lower. Thus, the effect of monetizing these commodities was to set minimum floor prices for them when used to repay loans. But the usury error struck in Europe, and by the time the practice of usury reached Greece and Rome over a millennia later, repayment and interest of metallic loans for agriculture were being demanded in metal or coinage. This practice was not sustainable, and as we shall see, it led to horrendous societal problems wherever it occurred. And that's the core of solutions going forward. So bear that in mind when we get to the sort of the towards the end of the blog, which ties these different themes together. So here we are, the final jigsaw. I was sent this link yesterday. I asked Peter Underwood to send it to me. Peter made a comment on the slog, John Ward's blog the other evening. I read the Burning Platform, which I think is a website Peter's associated with. Peter goes by the name in web world as Austrian Peter. And I've come across Peter and the Tim Morgan's Seeds blog, and I have something in common with both of them, but also a great difference. And that very great difference is what Zarlenga calls the usury error, which we've just seen how the usury error effectively puts the financial system ahead of the production system. So it's effectively a system of a tail wagging a dog, which keeps the tail on top of the dog. If at its root, the accumulation to the center, to the money power of all wealth is neutralized in the first rule set, as it were, of political economy. So that's the simple solution is having many different commodities or indeed services being able to be monetized to repay debts rather than being reliant upon one metal species, as it were. And it's a fundamental starting point. If you don't get to that starting point in your reasoning, you can solve a lot of intermediate problems, but you get back to where you started, and that's really the basis of the famous Amo Rothschild quote about give me control of a nation's currency and I care not who makes its laws. Okay, and this is a fundamental point. And if you see the matter as a jigsaw is a determinist metaphor in that it proposes one solution according to one picture. Now, I use that metaphor, and what I say is the picture on one side, which everyone thinks they're solving a jigsaw of, okay, has actually got the real instruction set on the back, and it's, you know, it's sort of like it's like a sick joke. Maybe Momus would approve. I certainly don't. In the introduction, or the financial jigsaw puzzle mind game. It's a good title that of this section, and these are Peter's words here. So, I want you to imagine a box in which there are 10 jigsaws of 1,000 pieces, each all mixed up, and no picture on the box to help you understand what any one complete jigsaw might look like. Your objective and task is to sort all the individual pieces so as to eventually knit together complete pictures of all 10 jigsaws. How would you go about it? What would you do first? Perhaps you might make a plan, a roadmap, if you will, following a methodology and thus working gradually towards the objective. I've been battling with this problem in the real world for over 30 years, and finally some of the jigsaw's pieces are beginning to link together in small sets of 2 or 3 items, offering clues to the overall emerging picture. One piece appears to represent the tiny island of Cyprus. There is also a special bit, a corner piece, upon which is written the word banks. There are many other individual pieces of the jigsaw displaying random odd words, which we all know, for example, money, debts, credit, austerity, wages, jobs, gold, savings, mortgages, benefits, inflation, and markets et al. And of all of those, I think the main one is usury. And just reading that usury mistake part of Zarlenga, along with even the dust cover notes of Zarlenga's book, you'll see that this jigsaw metaphor or analogy breaks down in the sense that a jigsaw is getting towards a preordained or a presupposed picture, someone else's idea of what the completed whole should look like. Okay, so and so I offer up this quote on that. When discovering the structure of DNA, Francis Crick famously announced to his drinking companions in a Cambridge tavern that he had discovered the secret of life. The director of his institute, Max Perutz, was rather more careful than Crick when he said that DNA was the score of life. That is more correct, since a musical score does nothing until it is played. DNA does nothing until activated to do so. Okay? And that's a quote from a book called The Dance to the Tune of Life, Biological Relativity by Dennis Noble. The idea of a musical score as opposed to a fixed recipe in Dennis Noble's book is, I think, a good conceptual comparison of two approaches to the same set of data. Of course, there are many potentials between the two categories of approach. Similarly, the jigsaw analogy in Peter Underwood's book presumes a final end state, a sort of deterministic outcome. Our starting point in making a life a banquet for a citizen should be, what are our objectives with this meal? What should we do with this set of ingredients in the pursuit of what? What indeed? And I would say life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Life, freedom, and the pursuit of happiness is a well-known phrase that is included in the American Declaration of Independence. It is one of the most famous phrases in the English language. The phrase, like the Declaration of Independence, was written by Thomas Jefferson and strongly influenced by the British philosopher John Locke. Benjamin Franklin supported Jefferson in toning down the protection of property as one of the tasks of the state in order to place in its place the pursuit of happiness. Now, this opens up the discussion which we all really need to be having. For instance, if Klaus Schwab really does believe that we will all own nothing but be happy, it begs the question, well, hold on a second, who does own? Who is the beneficial owner of the stuff that we're happy not owning and presumably we're renting? Who is entitled to the rental stream and the profit or honorarium for renting it out, as well, renting out the stuff? I mean, I made a point in a blog a couple of weeks back. Bill Gates, in an early interview, he's interviewed on The Far Side, David Malone's documentary, for the 30th anniversary of the Horizon program. And it's a 1980s interview with Bill Gates where he's talking about having works of art, digitizing them, and then people can pay to look at them. Of course, the unstated thing is that he is actually owning them. So he is buying them and actually owning them and has access to the real thing, whilst charging people, a rent to actually then look at these things. And of course, you don't have to go and see the real Mona Lisa in the Louvre, or you don't have to go to the Tate Modern to see, John Constable's work, not the Tate Modern, the Tate down on the embankment there, the old Tate, to see, Constable's works or etc. You'd be stuck in your smart city battery apartment. That's a reference to Battery Hens, to battery apartment, and with your meta headset a la Zuckerberg, and that should be enough, the experience. But that isn't the experience, is it? So life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What is the, what is the purpose of the organization of the economy? On whose behalf is the economy organized, and to what end? Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, I would argue, can't be improved upon. So then, just tying it together, here is this gentleman here who developed, where are we? There we are, Boule Boules. Which is this created in 1959 by Belgian writer and artist Jean Rober. That, I think you'll find that he's the guy in that interview there. The late John Rober. And yep, here it is, Rober. Drawing Boule Boules, and this is an interview with him.
Merci Robin et bonne chance. Merci. Boule, Bill et Robin. Un trio inséparable dont on ne sait pas trop lequel des trois est le plus sympathique.
Right, so let's just do this bit here.
Oui, j'ai eu les chiens. Beaucoup. Pourquoi? Parce que c'était une habitude chez moi, il me faut un animal chien. Et puis je crois que le chien, depuis les temps immémoriaux, doit accompagner l'homme dans sa vie, même dans ses journées. Il y a peut-être un petit peu de ça. Je le trouve gentil et il me faut leur compagnie en tout cas. Les hommes, mais pas tous. Certains, oui, bien sûr. Je ne vais pas dire que j'aime tous les chiens non plus. Je crois qu'ils ont leur caractère comme les hommes. Alors, il y a des gens qu'on préfère à d'autres.
Ciné a écrit quelque part « Je préfère les chats aux chiens parce qu'il n'y a pas de chat policier ». Qu'est-ce que vous en pensez?
Oui, c'est une boutade. C'est un peu vrai dans la mesure où les policiers sont plutôt hommes. C'est la vieille discussion entre les amoureux des chats et des chiens.
The old discussion of lovers of dogs or cats. So I don't want to throw you off the scent, as it were, but this is my eternal fascination with Duchamp and the grey space, and that the person who looks at the picture completes the picture and gives it its meaning in that momentary exchange. And cartoonists understand this, and as with other jokes about like the silencing of tongues in the Eintopf stews, as it were. The most common Eintopf is the silenced tongue, which I think it's an important point of how examining a fundamental question of what we want, why we want it, and how are we going to get it, rather than having that literally dictated to us, and then beyond that having that dictated desire manipulated so that one then responds to the suggestion in an enthusiastic way when it is against our own interests. So defining our own personal, our family, our community, neighborhood, national, scaling up from the smaller to the large, defining objectives and what's achievable is a process of assembling available ingredients into a recipe. So you interpret the ingredients into a recipe, which then unfolds. And so the ingredients with the recipe then unfold in an interpretation into an emerging reality, which has the objective to hit the target of life. So to cherish and support and give life in freedom. So Socrates said the unexamined life is not worth living. So the idea of living in an awakened state, a state of communion with our fellow human beings and fellow sentient beings, and within so a life, an enjoyable life, a free life, pursuing happiness. And just those three little words, life, liberty and happiness, or pursuit of happiness, there's plenty to be going on about. So I was like, well, hold on again, that doesn't make me happy, but it makes you happy. How do we accommodate these things? But you start from the ingredients, and we have an embarrassment of riches in the modern world as to the ingredients to be going forward with, and matters such as artificial scarcity seek to deny that the storehouses are full. Okay, so the storehouses are full, but assuredly the counting houses are full in the money power, and the money power seek to maintain full counting houses and are unconcerned that the distribution of the storehouses is achieved for all in pursuit of life, liberty and pursuit of happiness. They're pursuing power, raw power, and continuing a dominion over everybody else by any means. And at the heart of that power is the usury mistake or the usury trick, or the great money trick, which was described in the famous book that, or not so famous these days, the Ragged Trousered Philanthropist, for instance. So I'm just going to wrap up now here with this final bit. So this is an epilogue in the first part of Peter Underwood, Austrian Peter's book, and Tim Morgan, and this bit I've highlighted here. So, but the financial economy has an essential anticipatory character. Every time someone lends, borrows, invests, or takes out an insurance policy, he or she has to work to some collective expectation for the future. Based on 200 years of experience, our default assumption has been that the future will be much like the recent past. That is, it will be characterized by growth in the real economy. If for any reason growth does not pan out as we expect, the assumption underpinning the financial economy system of claims cease to be valid and claims may prove impossible to honour. Now, that sets the hair running in completely the wrong direction. The core question here is the usury mistake and what is used in exchange for what is produced. And its producers should determine that question, not an external E4 of debt. So the E4s of debt above and astride the law, which I mentioned in my poem, Usury, Hell's Fuel, Man's Oppressor. E4s of debt, it's Schumpeter's term for the money power. He calls them E4s of debt. And the E4s were the oracles or the divines or mystics who were above the Spartan kings. Sparta had two kings, and the E4s were who the kings were answerable to. And who were the E4s answerable to for their divinations, as it were, or their rulings. And again, these are questions which are thrown up by Momus and the gods in council and what have you. And we've got to address that key question without making the usury mistake at the heart or at the core, at the kernel of the algorithm of governance. Okay, if you commit the usury error, the unfolding of the algorithm will deterministically result in where we are now. And the ancients knew that. The writers of the American Constitution knew that. It's knowledge which has become more widely known in times of crisis in what we call capitalism. So it became widely known in the late 1800s, the crime of 1873, the demonetization of silver, Williams Jennings Bryant's The Cross of Gold speech, into the 1930s, people like Elizabeth Lease, even Roy Rogers, the cowboy, trickle-down economics. So late 1930s. And again, then I would say post the 2008 financial crisis, with the nascent Occupy movement, the Occupy movement started to address these questions. The questions had also come to a fore in the late 1990s in opposition to various trade deals and what have you. And we are, I would say, even with the restrictions on the internet as we speak now, this occulted knowledge has risen, as all cream rises, to the top, and by grasping these wholesome truths and nurturing that spark, that flame, okay, into a beacon of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that is where we need to go. Now, just on that last sort of, for me, rhetorical flourish, I'm going to just see if I can find a poem which I wrote easily here. Here we are. So I'm going to read this poem in a minute, but just to see what came up in that. So embers and bonfire, only 5 blogs comes up. It's all done with swaps, TTIP, Ardhar, the Delhi farmers' protests, Brino, let them eat cake, military industrial complex, the bank's feudal endgame, ever felt you've been cheated. That's October 2019. That's December 2021. This one here, climate change, anthropogenic global warming, and all points from activism to skepticism. That's a PDF I put together in 2016. This one here, November 2016, the giant sucking sound, a sharp intake of breath, a duel to the death, the United States Republic, 1776 to 2016. And then this one here, Gina Miller, thank you, Gina Miller, which is kind of tongue in cheek. So here we are. I mean, this is quite a good cartoon. This, you've got someone putting a penalty notice on a car, and the judge is saying, "Hope you're aware of the long-term legal implications of your actions." Well, let's have a think about that. But I'm going to just round this off with this. It's a short poem which I wrote back in 2016, which I did on November the 5th, 2016. And it's called Bonfire, Flames and Embers. Around the bonfire stand communities. Children burn sparklers and adults candles. Effigies atop the bonfire fear the flames. At the seat of the fire, embers accumulate. Dreaming at home, communities retire. Slumber hangs over the town. The bonfire smoulders unobserved. Effigies, sparklers and candles, all embers now. Flames lick the skies spectacular. Sparklers delight and perform fleetingly. Candles support but one fragile frame. Embers, wax and magnesia. Calliopesis or magnesia fueled from embers. The health of the embers, combustible flames. Who celebrates the embers' endeavours? Who sees the symbiosis of the combustion and the fuel? All fate leads into the embers, all embers fate to blow as dust, all flames from the embers driven. Do the flames celebrate the embers for their finery? Love. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is that. I hope you got something out of it.